You are listening to Invest in the Future by Future Africa. Future Africa is a platform connecting mission driven innovators and investors looking to turn Africa's most difficult challenges into global business opportunities. Please note that the content of this podcast is not to be regarded as investment advice. You are listening to a live recording between Adenike Sheriff, principal at Future Africa, and Odunayo Eweniyi, co-founder Piggyvest and FirstCheck Africa at Invest in the Future, our live podcast series.
Hi, Odun. It's so great to be speaking. I'm really excited to do. And coincidentally, this is the second time that we will both be in a session today. We had the UK Nigeria tech session earlier.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, but my panel was before yours. So it's so great to be speaking. Really excited, to be doing this. Great to see you. I love the hair. So I think we'll just start. I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Adenike, and I work at Future Africa. I find really amazing companies for us to invest in, as well as manage our community of co-investors. Over the past year, we've worked to deploy about $1.6 million into 21 startups, and are set to do even more. And I'm especially excited about this conversation because Odun as well, has started her investment journey. So I'm really excited to have you tell us more about what you're doing at FirstCheck. But to start with, I'd like you to please introduce yourself, give us a background about yourself, your career. How did you start? What was the process like? Just tell us the whole story.
Hi, everybody. My name is Odunayo Eweniyi. I'm co-founder and COO of Piggyvest, and now co-founder and partner at FirstCheck Africa as well. Piggyvest is a fintech company, automated micro savings and micro investments in Lagos. And, FirstCheck is an early stage investment company for women. I started my tech journey, I suppose, in 2013, right out of university. And it was by writing for Tech Cabal and by working on Paroles, a startup that my friends were working on at the time. And then we moved straight from there into starting a company called Push CV, which we ran for 2 years, and several other tiny ventures, all of which failed. And in 2016, we got the idea for Piggyvest. It's a fun fact. I once applied for, I applied for the first Andela Fellowship, and then I did not show up for my interview because I just figured, I'm just going to be a startup founder. And, in 2016, we got the idea for Piggyvest, and, it's all kind of led to this point, I suppose.
Amazing. And it's, really exciting to see all the progress that you have made. So you talked about working on a couple of companies that have failed. And I love that, especially because it just gives a clearer picture of what the reality of building a startup is. The reality is that some of the things will fail. So what advice would you give to people who are trying to start out? How do they measure their ideas? Basically, what advice would you give yourself when you were starting out as a startup founder?
Well, I think that a good place to kind of start is to understand that everything that can go wrong will go wrong. And, no one ever tells you that. People always you see the finished product, you look at, companies like Paystack, you see companies like Flutterwave, and you think, oh, these founders are doing well. And a lot of it is, exclusive of the journey that led them there. And so one of the things that you learn from being on the ground, being inside of all of it, is that everything that can go wrong will go wrong. And if you are not able to kind of recognize and embrace that, then perhaps this journey is not yours. If you're trying to start, by all means, always do everything that you set your mind to. You can do anything you want to do. But in understanding that you can do anything you want to do is also the self-awareness that, you're not Superman. And even if you were, it has failed, right? So what that means is that you need to kind of reconcile yourself with the idea of failure and kind of get comfortable with it, right? People tell these stories, and perhaps failure is not highlighted enough, but it's a very integral part of the journey of being an entrepreneur on whatever level, whether you're a tech entrepreneur or even non-tech entrepreneur. It's just something that's constant. So of course, start, do it. There's so many opportunities out there, but just as many opportunities that there are as many challenges. So we need to understand that.
Amazing. Tell me about the craziest thing that has happened to you as a startup founder. You mentioned that things will always go wrong. So tell us about a crazy thing that has happened.
Well, I mean, we've had many. I suppose one that's crazy and also kind of funny and also highlights the problem with logistics in Nigeria is in 2000, I think it was in 2015, we were running Push TV, but also running this company called 500 Dishes. And the idea behind 500 Dishes was to kind of connect people who cooked in bulk with people who ordered in bulk. And we've been having logistics challenges. We partnered with like some logistics companies. It was going badly. And so we were advised, how about you guys try to have your own fleet of bikes? So we started with one bike. And that day, some orders were placed and our dispatch rider picked them up, and just halfway to the delivery point, he stopped in the middle of the road and he ate the food. So there was not a lot that we could do at that point. We kind of just went ahead. So he ate the food, and we had to refund the owner of the food. And that's one of like the many insane things that happened on the journey. Yeah. So after that, we realized that
and how did that end?
We asked him why, and he said he was hungry. And so I don't know where you go from there. Like I don't know how you get upset with the person who's hungry and who's like serious, who's being serious about it. So I think it was at that point that we realized that if we're not going to solve the logistics problem in Nigeria, we kind of have to hang it up here. So yeah.
Yeah. No, that's a really funny story, especially because I'm sure you had to now start talking to the vendor and the person you were supposed to deliver to. Yeah. But you're a person who does a lot of things. You work at Piggyvest, you're Chief Operating Officer at Piggyvest, you have FirstCheck, you work with the Feminist Coalition, and I know that you really watch a lot of movies and series. So how do you actually manage and balance all of these things together? And what time management advice do you have for people who are building companies, especially because you have to take care of yourself too? So how do you balance all of that?
Well, there's two things. First is that like I do many things because I have many interests and because I have ADHD, medically diagnosed ADHD, which means I literally have to do like I get bored easily, so I kind of have to focus on many things at once to keep my attention. And second thing is, I don't think I balance a lot of things successfully. Some things I have failed at balancing and had to drop if we're being serious. So what I try to do is, there's several, like, I think that a person is multifaceted, right? And there's things that satisfy the different aspects of you, right? And when I look out there, I kind of see several problems and I want to be involved in solving them. I'm learning now to much better allocate my time. Piggyvest I love because of the mission behind it is, solving financial problems for this generation and the generation that comes after it, right? And then, FirstCheck I'm doing because it's very, very personal to me, right? This is my second attempt at investment. I hope this one goes well. I think that there's something to be said for solving this problem for women specifically. So I don't know that I balance my times well. I think that I try as much as humanly possible to be able to hold all these strings together. And sometimes I fail. Right now, I've learned to hire help and delegate and, do things that are within my own strength circle, so to speak. So I do have a lot of interest because I have like a very weird attention span, but TV shows and movies are my way of stepping down, like I'm relaxing and kind of decompressing. You kind of, in tech, I found that when you start to solve a problem, it becomes easy for you to kind of open your eyes to all the other problems that are happening as well. And there is always the attraction to, I want to fix this, I want to fix this. So I'm learning as I go along that you cannot fix anything, but I will try to fix as much as I can.
Amazing. Thank you so much. So I think that you've given us a nice segue into talking about what you're, building at FirstCheck. But before we even go into that proper, what was your experience like raising money for Piggyvest and your other companies as a Black female founder?
It wasn't great. It wasn't great, but I think I was luckier than most. I had an incredible support system. By the time we started raising, I'd made some like really cool friends in the ecosystem, both founders and investors. That by the time we started raising, it wasn't smooth or anything like that. I don't think we faced the stumbling blocks that the typical like female-led or like Black company would have faced. We had like some like horrid encounters. I reported several of them to Eweniyi, I think, and so some people were like incredibly sexist, both in Nigeria and abroad, and when we started Piggyvest, like the first set of people we met for funding, and I don't want to name them now. I think we're all on good terms. They all were just like, this company is not going to survive. You're going to fail. There's no point putting money behind it. The banks will kill it. Very demoralizing, but also, I suppose, a natural reaction if you look back at how insane it must have sounded in 2016 to say that you're going to create a savings platform that's outside of the banks. So, and then for like a year and a half after that, no Nigerian investor would give us money, right? So we had to use our own money. So what happened then, to be fair, no foreign investor would give us either, so it wasn't unique. What happened then was that we went to an accelerator program called Village Capital. Village Capital is this peer-to-peer accelerator program where at the end of it, the participants in the accelerator kind of vote for the two companies who win the 50K. And then we ended up winning that 50K investment, and that opened up like the floodgates of investment interest. And you'd have thought that maybe after getting that Village Capital 50K, this was in June of 2017, we would close a round, but we didn't close the round until I think 9 months after, right? After VilCap, we signed a letter of intent with an investment company, and after we signed that letter, we just did not hear from them again. Like they just disappeared, right? And then after that, we met with a local investment fund, and they gave us this term sheet that I still maintain is objectively horrible. And so we had to pass on that as well. And then after that, we got like and flirted a bit with this acqui-hire option, and we quickly decided that no, we thought that this was a long-term growth thing, so we passed it away from that. It was on the 5th try that we met our current investors, right? And who were able to, and the funny part is between meeting them and closing the deal was only 2 weeks, which kind of put in context the previous 9 months and how terrible it was. But one of the good things was that we had an investor from Push CV, his name is Mr. Olumide, who had followed us and was pushing us and putting us through all of these journeys, and kind of was very instrumental in the 1.1 seed round that we eventually closed in March 2018.
Yeah, that's such an amazing story, and thank you so much for being honest. So key things I've learned, sometimes, the accelerator route is great. If you can find everybody to validate you.
Yes.
To get an angel that will write for you and help you raise your funding round, use their connections to support you. 3, keep building even when you're not getting the response that you want from investors, because I'm sure that the traction that you kept getting must have made it more convincing. It wasn't like you got into Village Capital and then you had the same traction as before you got in. You kept improving the product and you kept building. But you mentioned two things that I want us to dig a little bit deeper into, because I'm all for us having really honest conversations about these things. So you mentioned sexism, and I know you don't have to name names, but can you sort of tell us or describe those sexist events? Because I think that we need to start telling people what these microaggressions look like or what they can seem like. And then what are the terms that, you know, you would say are very predatory? Because you mentioned getting a term sheet that wasn't favorable to you. What should founders absolutely not accept, no matter how desperate they are?
Right. Well, so in terms of the sex, so I think that like the Nigerian ecosystem is very special because you know, abroad maybe, you know, they'll secretly say you know, we don't want women here, or we don't want Black people here. In Nigeria, they don't tell you any of those things. They just do random terrible things to you that make you know that, like, so for instance, right, I was in this group. I will not give too much information about this setting. I was in this group and I think there were 16 men and there were 4 women, right? And the program that we were in, you know, involved quite a bit of travel, quite a bit of movement, and quite a bit of lodging into hotels. And so what happened was we were then asked to share hotel rooms. And we were like, oh yeah, you know, us ladies were like, no, we don't want to share hotel rooms because that was not the agreement. And we would prefer to pay for our own individual rooms. And this person was just like very dismissive, was like, no, you can't. Right. And we're like, is this like applicable to everybody? And he said yes. And then the next day we found out that like all of the men were able to sleep like not in shared rooms, and it was just us sleeping in shared rooms, even though we had
Wow.
offered to pay by ourselves. And it wasn't just that, it was also the tiny things, lording investment connections over women's heads, because you're asking them to do particular things. Those are like bottom barrel, terrible behavior towards women, you know, saying things like, you know, you won't be able to raise elsewhere if we don't invest in you. These are not languages that people will ordinarily use when they are talking to men, because there is an innate way that Nigerian men respect their fellow men that they just don't for women, right? And also sometimes commenting slightly on like dressing, you know, asking the person who's dressing girly that they're not dressed too smartly, and asking the person who's dressed not girly. This actually happened to me and happened to my friend also, telling me, why am I not wearing heels? Why am I wearing sneakers? I just feel like no one ever comments on what the man is wearing. People arrive regularly in traditional wear to formal events and no one says anything. So why do you people think that it's okay to do that to women? And on the other hand, there's like really weird like energy. Like there was a time when we were working on pre-CV that someone was putting together a collective of employment companies, and we were the only ones not excluded. And the only thing I could find was that we had like, we were female led, and I thought that was very interesting. I mean, the collective didn't come to anything, but like I just like, it would have been nice to be included, even if you're going to fail and things like that. So you know, there was a time I went for an event and I brought out my hand for a shake and someone kissed my forehead. And that possibly is the worst thing I've ever been through in this tech ecosystem, because I wanted to like just leave. But I had to stay, you know, finish the commitment, speak, especially because the audience had like some women in it. And I think it's very important to be represented. So, you know, there's all those really tiny things. They're not going to come to your face and tell you I'm rejecting you because you're a woman. They're going to set meetings like in the night when you don't feel safe to walk about. They're going to set meetings in venues that we don't feel comfortable in because it's not a safe place for women. And those things either are deliberately sexist or just excluding us, which is maybe subconsciously, I don't know, but those things happen. And as for terms, right, I don't know all the bad terms, but I know that if you are at the early stage of like raising funds and someone is asking for like more control than you as the founder, then that represents a problem. Right, someone saying that they want to be like at early stage, like the first round of funding into the company, they want to be the ones to approve subsequent investors. That's problematic. I don't think that should pass anywhere. I don't even think it's best practice at all. So, there were all these kind of terms, we
Yeah.
want to approve this, we want to approve that, we will be able to approve, whoever invests and whoever sits on the board. Those just feel
Ah,
like excesses and things like, so we had that in the term sheet and I read it and I'm like, I don't think that this allows us to kind of grow and spread our
yeah.
wings. And they also wanted to be deeply involved in the recruitment process for the company as well. Look, I know that when we started Piggyvest, we didn't have a lot of finance experience, but I still don't
Yeah.
think that it behooves the investor to sit on my hiring committee
Yeah.
because they are contractually obligated to that sounds like a problem to me.
Yeah.
So those were the kind of terms we saw and we're like, no, I don't think that we can live with this. And we're very my team is very impulsive as well. We make a lot of decisions on the fly. And I just think that like one of the reasons that we and Mr. Olumide have worked so well, he's been invested in us for the past 7 years, is that he kind of understands where we're coming from on the whole product and idea thing. He does step in to keep us grounded once in a while, but a lot of the times he kind of allows us to create. And some teams like investors who are super hands-on, but I think you have to figure out what kind of investor founder dynamic works for you and kind of go with that. That one that we rejected just did not
Yeah.
work.
Yeah. And I'm glad you rejected it. Nobody should have nobody should have to endure such tests. And I'm just going to
Exactly.
plug Future Africa in a bit. We are here to support you, but not babysit you. So we will not ask to be on your hiring committee or anything like that. But thank you for sharing so honestly about like the microaggressions, the sexism. And I think that the most important thing that I picked out there was there's blatant sexism, which happens, but there's also an exclusion of women that happens. For example, you gave the example of, asking for meetings at night in places where women don't feel safe. And sometimes women aren't able to speak up against these things because one, you are trying to seek investment, you don't want to look unserious. Is why I think it's absolutely fantastic that you have created a fund that is dedicated to, investing in women, and you're going to invest in only women companies. So please tell us more about that. What was the motivation? What have you learned since starting this, and what are your plans for it?
Right. I mean, the motivations were just like a lot of times when you would sit on these panels and you would hear people speak about the presence or absence of like a pipeline of women founders, you'd be wondering like, are they really right? Are they right that there are just no female founders out there? And that's a question I've asked because for a long time, when I got into tech space, there was like, I don't know, maybe 5 of us. Now there's more, but the conversation is still the same
Yeah.
around getting female founders. In fact, if you try to create female programs, men are like, you're not going to achieve anything with that because they're not interested and things like that. And I have like been an advocate of, I think that we might have to go to the, secondary schools and primary schools to kind of start to ignite that interest in STEM in women. We
Yeah.
definitely understand that there are systemic and, ingrained societal problems with women's interest in science and technology and, business and entrepreneurship. But even as it stands today, are we saying that there are no women with like great tech enabled ideas? Right.
Mm.
So I will say that FirstCheck as it is right now is a proof of concept program. Right. So Eloha and I sat down in October and we're just chatting about this particular point that everyone is quick to make. There are no female
Great.
founders, and it's like we want to invest, but we can't find them. I disagree, right? But I'd like to be data backed, and so here we are, right? So FirstCheck's entire premise, and this is highly experimental, and that's one of the reasons why we are going into it with our own funds is what if you gave women funds at just above idea stage, right?
Yeah.
Build these companies and work on it along with them, introduce them to your network. Like, for instance, if we found a woman who like had an idea for a fintech company and just had only an MVP, no traction, but we thought it could go somewhere. And we say, here's $25,000. We're going to introduce you to Paystack for your disbursements, Flutterwave for your collections, Mondo for your API, and this for your partnerships and things like that. And, if we can get them from point A to point E, and then hand them over to an investment collective like
To
Future
us.
Africa, and things like that, would we see an upsurge in the number of female founders that are getting funding and getting this attention? Representation actually does matter. And if we keep allowing the narrative that there are no female, I don't want to be the only woman, when people think of women in tech, the only one that they invite. There is no joy in that, right? There's just where is the continuity? And so that's where the idea came from. We need more founders, and people are always saying this, that founders are the ones who will become the next set of investors. So why not now, right? So
Yeah.
it takes less time than it sounds.
Yeah.
And we have help, and we have this very supportive network that's ready to kind of help us along. So this first year is about, can we identify 6 brand new, different female founders or female-led companies? We need these women to be decision makers in these companies. Hand them 25,000, get them towards the next 6-9 months, and then hand them to the pre-seed, seed stage investors.
Amazing. And I completely love that. You are even going earlier than pre-seed. You are going to people who just have ideas. There's not too much of an entry requirement, so to speak. It's just come as you are, and we're going to help you scale it. And I think that primarily this is a way to create access for women, because women typically don't have access to these networks. They probably are not in that career line. They don't work in tech. They don't speak the lingo. They don't hang out where men in tech hang out. No, because I say this all the time, right? African women are very enterprising. In fact, Black women are very enterprising and industrious in general. Like, I see businesses on Instagram and they are doing hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue. So it means that these women have valid need, access to the network. So that's pretty exciting what you're doing. So I think that my next question is, I know that it's only been a few weeks, but what trends have you seen? What has the response been like?
I'll tell you, the word that comes to mind is overwhelming. With the sheer number of people that said, we want to help you. I was like, oh my God, I did not know that people were going to be this interested in it. That's why we didn't even do any press release. I was just like, we'll just tweet about it and move on and then get to the book. But we've had a lot of support, and then we've had an incredible number of applications, right?
Amazing.
So I mean, I will not say that we've sorted through. We're just starting the process of sorting through. But we do have a large pool, and if you have a pool of close to 600, I think we can find 6, right? So that's kind of the stage at which we are, is that the applications came rolling in, the extensions of help and partnership and opportunities came rolling in, and I think those are very nice and very promising. And so I can tell you that I think that the aim to find 6 women, I think that we can do it. More than anything, I want this experiment to succeed so we can roll this into a proper fund that women can continue to apply to. So this first year, we're giving it everything that we can. We have more than, I think we had in total correspondence from 1,300 people. More than half of those were from founders. Our prospective founders, and the other half was from partners and investors and potential funding opportunities for the company, which I think is really cool. Very nice pipeline to start with, if we're being honest. And so that's kind of where we are. We have an information session tomorrow that's supposed to be the grand kickoff of this. We'll then launch the pipeline, application form and things like that, and people will be able to apply on a rolling basis, and we'll just take it from there.
Amazing. That really sounds amazing. So can you please just go a little bit deeper for the benefit of women who are on the call, who might be interested in applying to FirstCheck? What criteria do you look out for? What's the application process like? And what's the criteria that you look?
Well, I mean, I think that if I had to say it on this podcast, Eloho would kill me because we have a session tomorrow. But I think that the
Okay.
most important criteria is to have like a scalable idea, right? Approaching MVP or at MVP stage,
Yes.
and then more than anything, be female led. We don't want men propping women up. This is a particular sticking point. We want the women to be key equal decision makers in these companies, right? So it's not just about like, you bring a woman who's your employee and then present her forward to get access to the funding. That's not going to pass. It's not going to work. So a scalable idea, female-led company, the rest will follow, right? So tomorrow people will hear like a more fleshed out like criteria structure, but those are the most
Yeah.
important things that we need those startups to have.
Awesome. When you look at the next 10 years, what impacts, looking back, in 2031, what impact would you like to see that FirstCheck has made? What would success look like for you in 10 years from now?
I mean, in the next 10 years, shall I talk about the next 3 years? In the next 3 years, I would like to have invested in 20 female-led companies in the next 3 years, right? And so I suppose in the next 10 years, we can just multiply that by 3.5,
Yeah.
right? Let there be this like group and cohort of female-led companies that we helped make happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let there be a very strong, formidable investment community that's routing funds to female founders. Let middle class women and young women have come into their own in terms of angel investing. Are more women writing checks than ever? And also, more importantly, let the data around female funding and fundraising be consistent. I think that one is like really important to me. The number just kind of goes up and down, up and down. And
Yeah.
if we don't know the real number, we never really know where to start.
Yeah.
So those are the kind of like the three things that we're looking at for the next 10 years, but we'll just start with the next three.
Okay, so I have a question here about what does MVP really mean? And I think that that's because different people interpret that differently. For some people, MVP means that you built out the first version of your product, you have some paying customers, while, for some people, it just means that you build out one part. So when you say MVP, what are you really looking for?
Minimum viable product in the dictionary definition of it, right? And it doesn't have to be complete. It just has to that there be a skeletal structure for how it will work end to end in place, right? So I'm not asking you to have had like paying customers. I do expect to see like efforts towards a waiting list, for instance, and then efforts towards not an actual waiting list, and just like here's how this will work end to end, and this is our skeletal MVP. That's it.
Okay, amazing. Um, I have another question here that says, as a startup founder, would you advise that startups build something first before looking for funding, or they start to raise funds from the idea stage?
Look, as it has always worked, as it is right now, let me say, as it is right now, you have to have something before you raise funding. Um, but if you're a woman, if you're at idea stage and you are convinced about the scalability of that idea and you've written it out, FirstCheck is like happy to listen. So I don't know, for men, I don't know if there's idea stage funding. There probably is though. I know a lot of guys that have raised off of one pagers. So I think that like there's opportunities there now. It's not as widespread, right? But like it's people have raised funds on WhatsApp chats and in WhatsApp groups. It's happening. Do you get? We're getting there. So I think okay, yeah, I'm going to revise my answer to yes. You can raise funding at whatever stage actually. It's just not as commonplace for women.
Yes. So you need the access, and that's what FirstCheck is,
Yeah.
bringing, bringing to the table. Another question I have is, the African tech ecosystem has had a great run. There has been tremendous growth in the last, 10 years, which is about, all of this really, really kicked off around that time. What would you say that we're on the right path? What would you like to see us do better as an ecosystem? And what do you think is being done really well?
I think we are on the right path, and just like the sheer amount of creation and founding that's going on is very exciting. Everyone always says that the energy in Nigeria, in Lagos especially, is very infectious. Like There is a lot of creation that's going on. There's a lot of movement there. I think that what we can do better is collaboration, right? And none of us, especially in the fintech, none of us are incumbents. And I think that while it is attractive to have like many tiny different ones, it's very important that we start to look at what like are the long-term sustainability plans, right? Yeah, David and Goliath is a beautiful story, just not a very sustainable one or nor a scalable one, right? It can happen several times. Do you get? So that means that like a lot of companies need to look inwards and then outwards at where can our possible collaboration points come from, right? Lots of stories about where are the exits and all of that. But I think that we first of all have to find out how can we work together, right? How can we, because, you know, again, you can have many tiny ones, but you need to start looking for how do we come together to form one big opponent? And it doesn't have to be everybody. They just have, we have to be open to lines and points of collaboration among ourselves to kind of build sustainability. If not, how do we want to fight? You know, like for instance, regulation in Nigeria is like a big sticking point for companies. And if we don't come together to like do the lobbying and the reviewing and the presenting, then it's just going to always be us coming after it and, you know, not being able to preempt these things or change it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for that. Playful question now. If you weren't working in tech, what do you think you'd be doing?
I would be a lecturer for sure. I would be a teacher.
That's interesting. Yeah. And what would you be teaching?
I don't know. Probably something around science, right? I was supposed to go for my master's in artificial intelligence as a major. So that's probably what I would have been teaching or researching if my life had gone according to the other plan. So yeah.
No, we're glad you didn't, because look at all the amazing stuff that you're doing now. Favorite podcasts?
I don't have a favorite podcast.
Okay, which ones do you like listening to?
Well, I mean,
which ones do you recommend?
Revisionist history. I like listening to Business Wars, and then I like listening to I Said What I Said, Jola and FK's podcast.
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Sorry. Yes, I can hear you now. Okay. So I heard you say you like listening to revisionist history, but yes. I might have missed another.
Okay, so revisionist history, Business Wars, and then I Said What I Said by Jola and FK.
Amazing. What's your favorite book or books you recommend?
I don't like to recommend books because I'm not a big reader of fiction. I'm not a big reader of nonfiction actually. I love reading fiction and then biographies or stories about like terrible things that have happened. So the book that I have read and reread would be Bad Blood by Elizabeth Holmes. I've read it back to back and back to back. I have like 3 copies of it, and I'm just now moving on to the book about like the story of Coca-Cola. So I like to read stories about existing companies and the very tiny things that made them fail or succeed, and something like that.
Okay, so we're going to go back to the serious stuff for a bit now. And audience, please send in your questions by typing them in the question and answer box. You might not get the chance to ask Odun questions anytime soon, so please take advantage of this opportunity. I have a question here that says, what advice do you have for aspiring startup founders, particularly in the West African context, for finding funding and investors and navigating issues of government regulation?
Advice for finding funding is a much easier question to start with. I think finding funding is just like talk to everybody, plug into the ecosystem, right? You guys are listening to this podcast. Future Africa is like a great place to start. And someone's asking how angel investors can easily find startups. You can find each other in the chat section as well. So there's All right, but like really talk to everybody. There's like so many funds starting up in Nigeria now, and in West Africa too, right? And they're actually like, there's more deals being made now than ever before. So there's quite a bit of channels, and like chat with people, be respectful of their time, but also chat with people. It's really like, it's really cool when people come into your DMs to ask, you know, in very respectful, like time conscious ways about how you can help them. The problem though is that people typically come without respect for the person's time, but a lot of people are willing to help, right? You know, you can DM or like reach out to funds like Ingressive, like Future Africa, and so many others that have started in the past 5 years alone, right? And they're actually writing checks actively. And there's an incredible collection of angels in Nigeria now, probably led by Mr. Alumide and Kola. I know if you can reach out to them as well. So funding in Nigeria is actually getting much easier and more democratized. So that's actually good news. Regulation, look, I think that you need to know people. Like I said, talk to everybody and have like supportive people in your corner. There is no company, especially if you're in fintech, that's without its regulatory challenges. You just need to have the right people speaking for you when you're not in the room. That's very, very important, right? In our case, it was Mr. Lumide and his very, very large network, and Kola Ino and Inyi and several other people who we've had the opportunity to interact with and tell the vision and show like, here's what we're trying to build. And then they go on to like defend us when all of these things come. And that's kind of how you keep it moving. So again, you have to be plugged into the people who can help you. And you actually have to do the work too of recognizing who those people are and then making sure that you're connected to them. You know, everyone always says that you're 2 degrees of separation away from the person who can help you. So that means you have to actually mine your network. People like hate to hear the whole networking thing, but I'm sorry that, you know, you actually cannot shy away from it when you're building a company. It's really key.
Yeah. I have a question here that says, given how risky and long-term angel investing is, at what stage in one's life or career should they consider going into angel investing?
That's a very interesting question. I think that angel investing is only slightly riskier than some of the asset classes that people already invest in, to be very honest, especially when you like read the details of the startups by yourself and kind of are convinced that you should invest in them. That being said, I don't think that you need to divide angel investing by career stages anymore, because there are collectives again who are collecting investment from you for as low as $1,000. Right. So that means that if you can save up to $1,000, you can become an angel investor. So you no longer have to segment. You no longer have to segment like who, like, you know, oh, this is when I can start, this is when I can stop. You can actually use some disposable income to actually kickstart the journey.
Yeah. Amazing. Okay. Thank you so much. I have to admit, young. I'm not sure if both of them are women, but they will both like to talk to you. One wants you to be part of her program focused on financial education for young women, and would like you to participate in that. And then another person here would like the opportunity to have a conversation with you. So I'll let you, think about that. And if you like it, we are very happy to connect you with those people. A really great question here is, how do you do the launch of a product? What has your experience taught you as the best way to launch, and what are factors to look at to choose location for the launch?
I think that experience has taught me that I don't have to do an event for a launch. I think that if you follow Elon Musk, you'll realize what he's been saying, that every tech company is its own PR company, right? So I do not like subscribe to the idea of having a launch event in a physical location for a product, right? I much prefer, and this is why I'm saying me, my, I, because this is a very personal philosophy of using the internet and leveraging the power of the internet to launch a product into. I don't want to invite like people to a gathering. It's most likely that the people who gathered there are not the people who use the product. So it's much easier for me to just launch it into the hands of the people who use it. I'm saying this as someone who's launched, a product physically before, and then who's just like released one onto the internet and let the internet take its course. I would much rather subscribe to the internet path.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. A couple of questions here about I'll just say Odun has said that they're having an information session tomorrow, if I'm correct. Odun, do you mind typing a link to that in the chat box so people can sign up and come there to ask any questions that they might have? I have one here that says, what impact did studying at Covenant University have on you?
Studying, I mean, I like Covenant. I'm very amused every time people ask what impact it had, because I don't think I can specifically say it. I will say though that I met every single person who has been my co-founder, like in Piggyvest especially, and on the past 7 years in Covenant. So I suppose it's connected me to the right people. I studied computer engineering, so I don't really know like what I can say in the education aspect since I'm not using it. But I met Somto, Joshua, Terry, Nonso, IBK, and Ayo, all in Covenant there. And they are the people I currently spend most of my waking moments with. And we've also kind of hired from there. I think that Covenant also kind of, I suppose, helped me to be confident, because I got into university at age 14. And so you kind of have to like open your eyes and open your mouth if you don't want to like be bullied. Even university people they try you. But so I think the right connections is one of the best things about Covenant University. And the reason why it's so hard to say this is the impact it's had on me is that I think that what you get out of Covenant University is firmly a result of what you want to get out of it and what you put into it. Do you get? Different people come out with very different experiences.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for that. Another really interesting question is, if you were to build a new startup today, what idea will you pursue and in what industry?
Why would I tell you that? I'm already thinking how am I supposed to make money if I do that? Although I will say that I do love education, so I'll probably move into the education sector like very quickly. Once we conquer fintech, fingers crossed, and like there's like an exit or an IPO event or something that makes me a ton of cash, I'll go like divert all of that into like revamping education. I'm very, very I love education. I told you guys I would be a lecturer. I'm very serious about that. So I'll definitely do something along those lines.
I would love to see you do a STEM school for just girls.
If I did a STEM school, I would like have an initiative encouraging girls to apply. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes, I can.
If I did a STEM school, I would encourage girls to apply, but it wouldn't be for just girls. It would be a unit like both sexes.
Amazing. Okay, that's great. So Odun has put the link to sign up for the FirstCheck information session tomorrow. Please check that out. Another question that I had was, as women, a lot of women tend to suffer from imposter syndrome just because of all the pressure, and because they have to almost work twice as hard as men do to be seen as truly competent in what they do. So how have you managed that, if you have dealt with it personally?
I think that like that's very true. I also don't think that imposter syndrome ever truly goes away. I've certainly had it, and it's something that like every time something great happens, I actually do ask myself like, why is this happening to me, and also do I deserve it? And every time I'm always like, what if one day people realize I'm not as great as they think, and things like that. But one of the things that my dad taught me was that if you are in a particular space, it's because you're supposed to be there, right? So one of the tricks is that you look around every time you feel like you're not good enough. You look around and you count the things that you as a person have achieved, you have done. You've had a hand in this, you have a hand in that. And then you truly tell yourself that, maybe, everybody goes around doubting themselves all the time. I don't think anybody is like 1000% secure, but what you need to do is convert that self-doubt into even more energy. You push yourself, right? So you use all of those negative thoughts to take the next big step and have the next big achievement. Because the one of the truly like incredible things about life is how no matter how much you feel you're not supposed to be there, you are there. And then you have to make your being there worth it for yourself and those looking up to you. So all of that energy is converted, I suppose, into the push for the next one. If you're so uncertain, then that means you need to keep moving, you need to keep achieving so you can use it, right? It's something that will probably happen over the course of your life, constantly happens to me, but that's why you keep moving, you keep achieving, and then at some point you'll be able to look at yourself and tell yourself, I did all of that, and that's the goal.
That's really great advice. So to wrap this up, since I don't think that we have any, okay, so this is a really good question. What advice do you have for aspiring startup founders who don't come from a technical or engineering background?
Well, I suppose the first big truth would be to understand that being a startup founder doesn't need you to have a computer science or computer engineering degree.
Yeah.
It requires you to want to solve a problem that you've identified and have a prospective solution for it, right? The flip side to that would be that you do need a technical founder. So you can do it. Just if you've identified a problem and found a solution, you are the right person to solve it, right? Figure that out, have it ready end to end, but you need a technical founder. And that's where relationships with others kind of comes in. You need to be able to find a technical founder who you guys speak the same language and have mutual respect. Those two things are very foundational. Someone you actually like, and I say someone you like because it is going to get difficult. They're technical, you're not. That means you're going to have to put a lot of trust in them and they you. So mutual respect, someone you like, so that when it gets difficult, you guys have that foundation, right, to kind of build upon to move on to the next one. I have my co-founders whom like I said, I've known for years. And when we had 500 dishes failed, it was still us together. When we have non-technical co-founders too, and when we had 99 staff fail, it was still us together. So you need to find someone who you are able to ride for and ride with in that way. But it doesn't mean that you yourself have to be technical. There's several different things you can do in tech without being technical.
Yeah. Another question that is coming up a lot here, and I would summarize it, is how do you find a great co-founder?
Well, I think back to that horrid thing that people don't like hearing about, networking and talking to people and just having chats across different friend groups and systems. So it's really about how the number of people that are directly in your pipeline for you to sift through to find technical co-founder is a factor of how much you put yourself out there and how many conversations you have. There's no science or there's no science to it. It's an art. And it's very, very flexible. You can meet your co-founder by someone leaning out of the window and calling you, or you can meet them at an event because you're sat beside each other. There's no.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time. So to wrap this up, I'd just like you to tell us one piece of advice that you really like and guides your life and how you live, and then we can all call it a day. This has been really, really amazing.
Right. So yes, I think that the big piece of advice, again, I'm stealing this from my dad. He always used to say, Odunayo, work very hard, aim very high, and care very deeply. Actually flip that, aim very high, work very hard, care very deeply. That's how he used to say it. And that's kind of what guides it. So if you do those three things and remain true to your passion, vision, and your values, I think that you'll be successful.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Odun. This has been really great. I have learned a lot. And
thank you for listening to that Invest in the Future episode. Please follow us on social media. Our handle is @AnAfricanFuture on all platforms. You can join Future Africa to co-invest in these innovators who are turning Africa's biggest challenges into global business opportunities by joining the Future Africa Collective, our exclusive community of co-investors. Please find more information and apply at future.africa/collective. Thank you for listening once again.